I didn't notice the pattern at first because the town made sure everything felt normal enough to ignore. That's the trick with traps built out of routine. They don't look like cages. They look like Tuesdays. Cedar Hollow was the kind of place that prided itself on being quiet, the kind of quiet people brag about like it's a personality trait. Low crime, they'd say. Low noise. Low drama. Which was funny because if drama were calories, half this town would be on a strict diet and still somehow gaining weight. I moved here for the same reason most people do. I was tired. Tired of rent going up like it was training for the Olympics. Tired of my boss calling me a team player whenever he needed me to stay late. Tired of dating apps that felt like shopping for disappointment with extra steps. Cedar Hollow promised me peace, cheap living, and a reset. The joke, of course, is that the town took reset personally. My first week, I thought I'd found the world's most predictable community. The diner opened at 6. The same 3 guys sat in the same booth like furniture with opinions. The barista at the coffee spot wrote motivational quotes on my cup as if I was personally funding her dream of becoming a therapist. Every evening, Mrs. Pruitt across the street watered her plants with the focus of someone defusing a bomb. Every night, the streetlights flickered once at exactly 11:59, and if you weren't paying attention, you'd chalk it up to bad wiring. The second week, someone went missing. Or at least that's what everyone said. The missing person was a guy named Toby, mid-30s, always sweaty like he'd just escaped a responsibility. He'd been talking all day about leaving. Not in a dramatic way either. No grand speeches, no tears. He just kept telling anyone who'd listen that he was done. He'd had it. New job lined up. Apartment keys. Boxes in his trunk. Freedom. At the diner, he leaned back in the booth, grinning like he'd won a lawsuit against his own life. Tomorrow morning, he said, tapping the table like it was a countdown. I'm out. I'm not waking up here again. The 3 booth guys, locals who looked like they'd been carved from old porch wood, made those little noises people make when they don't believe in change. The waitress, Kim, gave him a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Sure, she said, like she was humoring a child who announced he was moving to the moon. That night, I went to bed early. At 11:58, the whole town seemed to hold its breath. At 11:59, the streetlights flickered. At midnight, my phone buzzed with a calendar notification I did not set. Wake up. Try again. I opened my eyes. It was morning. Not a new morning. The same morning. The same thin sunlight. The same neighbor watering plants like it was the only thing keeping civilization from collapsing. My phone read the same date. My alarm played the same obnoxious tone. My coffee tasted like regret and hope in equal parts. I told myself I'd dreamed it. Then I went to the diner and Toby was there again, sweaty and excited, repeating the same lines, word for word, like the town was replaying him. Tomorrow morning, he said, tapping the table. I'm out. I laughed because what else do you do when reality starts acting like it's stuck on a loop? It came out wrong, too loud, and every head turned to look at me. The booth guys stared like I'd interrupted church. Kim poured coffee without asking, like she already knew my order. You're new, she said. Yeah, I said slowly. And apparently I'm also here yesterday. Kim's smile twitched. She glanced at the clock, then back at me. Don't joke about that. That's when I started noticing the disappearances weren't random. They weren't kidnappings or murders or some edgy small-town mystery that ends with a creepy basement and a big twist. The town wasn't snatching people out of their beds. It was taking people who reached a certain point. Not everyone vanished. Only the ones who, to put it politely, finally grew a spine. The woman who told her husband she was leaving after 20 years of roommate marriage. Gone. The teenager who said, I'm not taking over the family business. I'm not dying here. Gone. The guy who quit his job at the hardware store, threw his apron in the trash, and called his manager a coupon for disappointment. Gone. They'd all announce it in public first, like a ritual. Like the town needed to hear them say it out loud. And then that night, they were erased from the next morning like they'd never been penciled in. At first, the locals reacted the way you'd expect people to react to missing neighbors. Concerned, whispery and a little too excited about having something to talk about. But the concern felt practiced, like they'd been doing it for years, like it was less grief and more gossip seasoning. Poor Brenda, Mrs. Pruitt said while watering her plants. Such a shame. Did she have family? I asked. Mrs. Pruitt blinked like I'd asked her to do math. Brenda? Yes, Brenda. The woman from the bank. She squinted. We don't have a bank. We did. I'd been in it. Brenda had stamped my deposit slip and complained about her husband's emotional range being limited to hunger and rage. But Mrs. Pruitt stood there, watering plants, looking at me like I was inventing characters for a book. It didn't take long before I realized this wasn't just a time loop. It was a selective loop. The town reset the day and smoothed over the edges. It didn't just rewind clocks. It rewrote memory. People who left didn't just leave. They ceased to exist in everyone else's story, except mine. I remembered Toby. I remembered Brenda. I remembered the teenager with the dead eyes and the bright dreams. And every morning, their absence sat on the town like a cleanly removed stitch. What Cedar Hollow lost at night wasn't bodies. It lost momentum. It lost decisions. It lost the people brave enough to do the one thing this place hated most. Commit. That's the word that kept popping into my head. Commit. Not just to leaving. To anything. To a choice. To a future. To a version of yourself that wasn't shaped by the town's dull comfort. Cedar Hollow didn't like closure. It didn't like endings. It didn't like people finishing things. It was like the entire town was an ex who still watched your Instagram stories. I tested it because once you realize you're in a nightmare, the next step is always the same: curiosity. Also, I'm human, which means I will poke the bear even when the bear is clearly labeled, will ruin your life. I started small. I wrote myself notes and taped them to my bathroom mirror. You did this already. I changed the time on my microwave and waited. Midnight came, streetlights flickered, and the next morning the microwave was back to normal. My notes were gone. Not torn down, not moved. Gone like they'd never existed. I tried taking pictures. The photos vanished from my phone after midnight like the town was clearing its browser history. I tried leaving town. The road out of Cedar Hollow is a straight line that cuts through a stretch of pine forest like someone drew it with a ruler. The first time I drove it, I felt that familiar mix of freedom and fear, the kind you get when you're about to do something your life has been waiting for. 10 minutes out, my GPS glitched and started spinning like it was possessed. My radio went static. The air got thick, like the world was holding me back by the collar. And then I blinked. I was parked in my driveway. The car still running. My hands white-knuckled on. The loop, I said quietly. The missing people. The resets. Her eyes darted to the booth guys. They weren't listening. They never listened. They just absorbed the room like background noise. Kim leaned in, voice low. Don't say that word. What word? I whispered. The one you just said, she hissed. Loop. Reset. Missing. Any of it. If the town hears you, it gets clingy. Clingy. I repeated, because of course my brain grabbed that word and immediately filed it under problematic but accurate. Cedar Hollow wasn't a prison, it was a needy partner. The kind that texts you up at midnight and then pretends it didn't. Kim swallowed. People who talk about leaving, they go. And then nobody remembers them. Except sometimes newcomers. So I said, you know this is happening. Kim's laugh was bitter. Knowing isn't the same as doing. That line sat in my chest all day. Knowing isn't the same as doing. Humans are incredible like that. We can identify a problem with perfect clarity, describe it in 12 different ways, make jokes about it, complain about it to our friends, and then wake up and do the same thing again because change is scary and comfort is familiar, even when it tastes like stale coffee. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the town breathe. At 11:58, the air felt charged. At 11:59, the streetlights flickered, and I realized the flicker wasn't electrical. It was like the world blinking. At midnight, my phone buzzed again with that same notification I never set. Wake up. Try again. I rolled onto my side, heart pounding, and that's when I heard footsteps outside. Light, confident, unhurried. Not sneaking. Not running. Like whoever it was had walked these streets 1,000 times and never once feared what happened at midnight. I slipped out of bed and peered through the blinds. A woman stood under the streetlight, and the streetlight didn't flicker above her. She wasn't from Cedar Hollow. You could tell because she looked like she belonged to a story that didn't repeat itself. Tall, poised, dressed like she'd stepped out of a different genre. And then there were the details my brain struggled to file under normal. The sharp, fox-like tilt to her features, the way her eyes reflected the light with a glint that wasn't human, the calm smile like she knew exactly what I was and exactly what I was going to do next. She looked up, straight at my window, as if she could see through the blinds and into my thoughts. And she mouthed 2 words, slow and clear, like a warning and a dare at the same time. Still here. Then the clock hit midnight. The streetlights flickered. The air shimmered. And she didn't disappear. She just stood there, watching the town reset around her like it was a cheap magic trick, like she'd seen humans cling to bad situations across 100 planets, and this was just another case study. My stomach dropped, not with fear, but with a strange, humiliating recognition. Whatever Cedar Hollow was, it wasn't stronger than her. And if she was here, it meant someone had been watching. Not the town.
Me.
The next morning, she was still here. That alone broke my brain a little, because everything else in Cedar Hollow behaved like it was under a strict bedtime routine. Midnight came, the world blinked, and the town snapped back into place. Fresh coffee pots. Same morning radio chatter. Same neighbor watering the same plants like the fate of Earth depended on petunias. But the Vulpine stranger didn't reset.
She didn't glitch.
She didn't forget. She existed through the seam in time, like it wasn't even stitched. I saw her at the diner before I even tasted my coffee. She sat at the counter with her legs crossed, posture perfect, like she'd ordered the entire building and expected it to arrive warm. She wore a plain jacket, but it somehow looked expensive because she wore it like a verdict. The most unsettling part wasn't the fox-like edge to her face or the gleam in her eyes. It was the confidence. Cedar Hollow was full of people who spoke like they were asking permission to exist. She spoke like the universe already approved. Kim paused mid-step when she saw her. Not a full stop. Kim didn't have the luxury of stopping, but a tiny hesitation. Like the town's gravity tugged and found something it couldn't pull. The stranger looked up and smiled at Kim. "Good morning. Still the same day." Kim's hand tightened around her notepad. "Coffee, please," the stranger said. "Black. Like your town's sense of humor." Kim blinked. "Excuse me?" The stranger tilted her head, amused. "Nothing. Just observing." I slid into a booth where I could watch without being obvious, which is something humans do even when we think we're subtle. We're not. We're nosy mammals with anxiety and a strong belief that if we stare at something long enough, it'll explain itself. She didn't bother pretending not to notice me. She looked right at my booth, lifted her cup slightly like a toast, and then turned back to Kim. Kim took her order, or at least went through the motions. I watched her hand shake while she wrote nothing down. There weren't many menu choices in Cedar Hollow anyway. Coffee, pie, regret. The stranger's gaze drifted around the diner with scientific interest, like she was studying a rare species. Which technically she was. The 3 booth guys were there too, same booth, same posture, same bored faces. One of them glanced at her and frowned, like his brain tried to place her in the town's familiar pattern and failed. He blinked, then looked away like a computer rebooting. The stranger noticed that too. She leaned slightly toward Kim. "Your locals have impressive denial reflexes." Kim kept her voice flat. "They're just tired." "So are you," the stranger said lightly. "But you're awake." Kim stiffened. "I don't know what you're talking about." The stranger took a slow sip of coffee and made a little thoughtful sound.
Burnt.
Like hope left on the stove too long. I couldn't help it. I snorted. It came out louder than I meant to, and Kim shot me a look that said, "Please don't encourage the alien." The stranger turned fully toward me now, resting her chin on her hand. "Hello again," she said. Still here. I slid out of the booth and walked to the counter, because if an impossible foxwoman is calling you out in public, you either run or you commit. And if Cedar Hollow taught me anything, it was that hesitation gets you nowhere. I sat 2 stools away. Who are you? The stranger's smile widened. That's a human question. And that's an answer that makes me want to throw this mug, I said, nodding at her coffee. Kim stood between us like a referee who didn't get paid enough for interspecies drama. Are you visiting? Kim asked carefully. The stranger glanced at Kim with something almost kind. In a way. Then she looked at me again. I'm studying you. Me? I said. You, she confirmed. And others like you. Humans who stay. I stared. Stay where? She lifted her hands, palms up, indicating the diner, the town, the whole looping mess. In places that don't serve them. In situations that drain them. In relationships that recycle the same argument with different wording. Kim's face tightened at that, and the stranger noticed. Oh, don't worry, she added, playful. I'm not here to judge. Judgment is a human hobby. I'm here to document. Document what? I asked. She leaned closer, lowering her voice like she was about to share gossip, not cosmic truth. Why you don't leave? I felt something in my chest flicker. Anger, embarrassment, recognition. I tried leaving. I know, she said calmly.
How?
She tapped the side of her temple with one finger. You broadcast your intentions like a radio tower. Humans do that. You call it processing. You say the plan out loud 12 times. You ask for opinions. You rehearse your courage until it's exhausted. Kim made a small sound, half laugh, half choke. The stranger's eyes brightened. Yes, she said, pleased. Like that. I swallowed. What are you? She considered, as if choosing a label that wouldn't melt my brain. An anthropologist. That's not a species. No, she agreed. But it's what I do.
Species are messy.
Jobs are simple. I watched her hands while she talked. Human hands, mostly, but the way she moved, too precise, too graceful, made my skin prickle. Like I was watching a performance of humanity. A very good one. Too good. Kim set a plate of pie down in front of her, without asking. It was routine, an automatic offering Cedar Hollow, made to anything that sat still long enough. The stranger glanced at the pie like it was a specimen. What is it? She asked. Cherry, Kim said. The stranger poked it gently with her fork. This appears to be fruit imprisoned in sugar. That's basically us, I muttered. The stranger's eyes flicked to me. You see? Self-awareness. Adorable. And useless. Bristled. Hey. She smiled wider. Oh, you'll do fine. Kim's voice came out sharp. What do you want? The stranger finally looked serious for half a second, and in that half second the diner felt colder. I want to understand, she said. Because your town is an anomaly. Our town is a nightmare, I said. Yes, she replied, as if confirming a hypothesis. A soft one. A padded cell with free refills. Kim crossed her arms. If you know so much, why are you here? Why not stop it? The stranger laughed. Quiet, pleased. Stop it? Why would I stop it? It's working exactly as designed. My stomach dropped. Designed. She nodded. Cedar Hollow is a mechanism. A looped environment. A containment program. It resets nightly and removes variables that disrupt stability. Kim went pale again. Variables, she whispered. The stranger's gaze slid to Kim. People who decide. My throat went tight. So the people who disappear are no longer contained, she said smoothly. They exit the loop. I stared at her. Exit where? She shrugged like it was a minor detail. Outside. Forward. Into the next day. Into consequence. Into uncertainty. Into life. Kim's eyes shone with something dangerous. Hope, anger, both. So they're not dead. The stranger tilted her head. Not in the way you mean. But from the loop's perspective, yes. They're gone.
Erased.
That's how the system maintains itself. It deletes memories of missing variables to prevent panic. I sat back, dizzy. And you're just here taking notes? She lifted her fork, sampled the pie, and hummed thoughtfully. Excessive sweetness. Also, yes. Kim's voice cracked. People have families. Friends. The stranger's expression softened in a way that felt practiced. Humans are very attached to narrative continuity. You like your stories to make sense. You like your people to stay in your cast list. That's because we're not monsters, I snapped. She didn't flinch. She just looked at me with mild curiosity. Are you sure? Humans destroy themselves constantly and call it love. You stay in bad jobs because leaving feels disrespectful. You remain loyal to pain because it's familiar. You say you want freedom, then panic when you have it. I opened my mouth to argue, but she kept going, voice light, almost teasing. You even have phrases for it, she said. You call it settling down. You call it sticking it out. You call it being patient. You have a remarkable talent for romanticizing endurance. Kim slammed a coffee pot down harder than necessary. So, what? You're here to laugh at us? The stranger's smile returned. Not laugh. Marvel. I watched her. Why do you look like that? I asked. She blinked, then smiled like I'd complimented her outfit. Like what? Like a fox, I said. Like you're playing human but you're not. Kim's eyes widened. She clearly hadn't wanted me to say that out loud. The stranger, however, looked delighted. Oh, she said warmly. You noticed. Kim's voice went small. What are you? The stranger leaned forward, lowering her voice again. Vulpine adjacent, she said. You would call my people fox-like. We don't mind. Foxes have a good reputation in your myths. Clever.
Slippery.
Good at escaping traps. She let that last part hang, then glanced around the diner. And you, she continued, are not. I felt heat rise in my face. I escaped plenty of things. She nodded as if agreeing with a child.
Yes.
You escape by complaining. You escape by fantasizing. You escape by saying you'll start tomorrow. Kim muttered, she's not wrong. I shot Kim a look. Traitor. Kim's lips twitched.
Sorry.
She's just painfully accurate. The stranger smiled like she enjoyed the friction. Human conflict is fascinating, she said. You push back against truth like it's a salesperson. I leaned closer, lowering my voice. If you know how it works, tell me how to leave. Her eyes glittered. You want to leave? Yes. No, you want to leave, she corrected gently. That's different. I clenched my jaw. I'm asking you. The stranger studied me, then sighed theatrically.
Fine.
Let's try a simple test. She slid off her stool with smooth precision and walked toward the diner door. Kim and I followed without thinking. Outside, the air was crisp, the town quiet, the sky too blue to match the dread curling in my stomach. The stranger stopped under the streetlight across from the diner and looked at me like a teacher about to embarrass a student. Tell me, she said, what are you afraid of? Nothing, I said quickly. She smiled. There it is. Kim crossed her arms. Stop messing with him. I'm not, the stranger replied. I'm clarifying. Humans lie to themselves first. Then they call it optimism. I swallowed. I'm afraid it won't work, I admitted. I'm afraid I'll try to leave and wake up in my driveway again. The stranger nodded, pleased. Reasonable. Kim's voice trembled. I'm afraid if I leave, I'll fail. The stranger's ears, no, not ears, I told myself, just hair, seemed to shift slightly, like something animal, and responded to the honesty. Also reasonable, she said. Humans fear two things most: the unknown and being seen trying. She turned back to me. Now, she said, say it clearly. Not as a wish. Not as a complaint. As a decision. I frowned. Say what? She stepped closer. Her eyes held mine like a hand on my throat. Firm, not cruel. Say you're leaving, she said. Not someday. Not soon. Not I should. Say it like you mean it. My mouth went dry. The streetlights flickered faintly even though it was midnight, like the town sensed danger. Like it. By the time the sun dipped low enough to stretch shadows across Cedar Hollow, the town had started acting nicer. That should have scared me more than the loop ever did. People smiled longer. Conversations felt warmer, like the town was leaning in close, lowering its voice, reminding you of all the good times you'd had together. The diner played music I liked. Not popular stuff, personal stuff. Songs I hadn't heard since college. The kind that trick you into thinking you're younger, that maybe you didn't waste as much time as you think. That's when I realized the town wasn't just reactive. It was manipulative. Kim noticed it too. She slid into the booth across from me during a lull, her voice low. "It's doing the thing," she said. "What thing?" "The courting," she replied. "When someone gets close to leaving." I raised an eyebrow. "You sound experienced." She snorted. "You don't work the same diner for 10 years in a town like this without almost leaving." That word again. Almost. Outside, Mrs. Pruitt waved at me for the first time since I moved in. Actually waved. Her smile was too wide, too practiced, like the town had adjusted her friendliness setting. The hardware store owner knocked 10% off my purchase just because. My landlord texted me to say he was lowering rent next month as a thank you for being such a good tenant. Cedar Hollow was love-bombing me. I leaned back in the booth, rubbing my temples. "It's trying to convince me I'm happy." Kim nodded. "It does that. Makes you doubt your own dissatisfaction. Makes you think you were overreacting." "That's disgusting," I said. She smiled sadly. "That's familiar." The Vulpine stranger showed up again just before sunset, leaning against a lamppost like she was waiting for a date. She watched the street with amused detachment. Tail, no, coat hem, I corrected myself, fluttering slightly in the breeze. "You see it now," she said when I approached. "It's bribing me," I replied. "Emotionally." She laughed softly. "Humans respond well to crumbs of validation. Your species is starved for it." Kim crossed her arms. "So, what happens tonight?" The stranger tilted her head. "Tonight the loop escalates." My stomach sank. Define escalates. "The town will test your resolve," she said calmly. "It will present you with the exact thing that kept you here in the first place. Not comfort. Meaning." That hit harder than I expected. Cedar Hollow wasn't just boring. It was safe. Predictable. It never asked me who I was becoming. It never challenged me to be impressive or brave or decisive. It let me exist at half volume. The stranger watched my face closely. "There it is," she murmured. "That's the hook. Humans don't stay because they're miserable. They stay because leaving would require them to rewrite their self-image." Kim swallowed. "And if we fail?" The stranger shrugged. "Then you wake up tomorrow and try again. Forever. Or until the system deems you harmless enough to ignore." Harmless. I echoed. "Yes," she said pleasantly. "Indecision is very soothing to artificial intelligence." I frowned. "So this whole town is run by an AI?" "In simplified terms," she replied. "Think of it as a psychological filter. It isolates sentient beings who demonstrate chronic hesitation. It studies them. It asks a single question on repeat." "What question?" She smiled. "How long can a species survive without choosing?" That pissed me off more than anything else she'd said. "We choose all the time." She raised an eyebrow. "You choose what to eat. You choose what to watch. You choose which discomfort is most tolerable. You avoid choices that alter trajectory." Kim muttered. "She's really not pulling punches." "I'm being generous," the stranger said. "Some civilizations collapse under far less self-delusion." As night crept in, the town grew quieter than usual. The streetlights hummed softly, like a lullaby. Doors closed early. People lingered in doorways, watching me with expressions that felt less curious and more hopeful. I felt like the town was waiting for me to disappoint it. At 11:45, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "Thought you might want this." A photo appeared. It was me, 5 years younger, smiling in a cluttered apartment I barely remembered. Back when I had plans. Back when I talked about writing, traveling, risking failure like it was an adventure instead of a threat. Another message followed. You were happier here. My chest tightened. It's in my phone, I whispered. Kim looked over my shoulder. That's messed up. The stranger nodded. The loop has access to personal data. It customizes persuasion. Humans are remarkably easy to emotionally blackmail. My phone buzzed again. You don't have to leave.
You can stay.
You're safe here. Safe. The most seductive word in the human language. At 11:55, the diner lights dimmed slightly. The radio shifted to a slower song. The air felt thick, heavy with memory and comfort. Cedar Hollow was making its case. I stood up, heart pounding. It's like breaking up with someone who knows all your weak spots. The stranger smiled knowingly. You humans even have a phrase for it. We've been through so much together. Kim's eyes shone. What if I can't do it? The stranger turned to her gently. Then you won't, she said. And that will be your choice too. That hurt more than judgment ever could. At 11:58, the town leaned in. Every sound softened. The streetlights brightened, like eyes widening. I felt an overwhelming urge to sit down, to relax, to let tomorrow take care of itself like it always did. That's when I realized the loop didn't force you to stay. It made leaving feel rude. I took a breath and remembered what the stranger said. Commitment isn't staying. Commitment is leaving. At 11:59, the streetlights flickered. The town whispered without words.
Stay. Rest. You're fine.
I stepped forward. I'm leaving, I said, not loudly, not angrily, just clearly. And if I fail, that's still better than pretending I didn't try. The air trembled. The diner windows rattled. Somewhere, something mechanical groaned, like a system under strain.
Kim gasped.
It's reacting. The stranger's grin was sharp with satisfaction.
Good.
You've hit a nerve. The town fought back. The door behind me swung open, and there was my old boss, smiling like a miracle. We've been looking for you, he said warmly. We want to offer you a promotion. I laughed, actually laughed. Of course you do. He stepped closer. More money. Less responsibility. The stranger leaned toward me. Notice the wording. Yeah, I said. It's allergic to growth. The clock ticked closer to midnight. The streetlights flickered harder now, like the town was blinking rapidly, panicking. Mrs. Pruitt appeared, tears in her eyes. You belong here, she said softly. We all do. Kim stepped beside me, shaking but determined. I don't, she said. I never did. The town howled, not with sound, but with pressure. The air bent. The world warped like a reflection in water. At exactly midnight, everything froze. No reset. No rewind. The streetlights stayed on. The stranger let out a low whistle. Well, she said, impressed. That's new. The town shuddered, system stalling, unable to reconcile a human who chose uncertainty over comfort. I felt lightheaded, like gravity itself had loosened its grip. Kim grabbed my arm. Is it working? The stranger's eyes gleamed. Oh, yes. The loop is destabilizing. The town hadn't lost people at night. It had been losing control. And for the first time since I arrived, Cedar Hollow didn't feel quiet. It felt afraid. The town didn't scream when it started to break. That would have been honest. Instead, Cedar Hollow did what it always did when faced with discomfort. It tried to smooth things over. The lights steadied. The air warmed. The pressure eased just enough to make doubt creep back in. For a moment, I wondered if I'd imagined the resistance. If I'd pushed too hard, too fast, and the town had simply absorbed it. The stranger watched the street carefully, her expression alert but amused, like a scientist waiting to see if the experiment bites back. Don't relax yet, she said. Systems like this don't fail dramatically. They fail politely. Kim laughed shakily. That tracks. The first sign something was truly wrong came from the clock above the diner door. It ticked forward. Not back. Forward. The second hand moved once. Then again. No flicker. No reset. Time, actual time, slipped past midnight and kept going. I exhaled a breath, I didn't know I'd been holding. Is that it? The stranger tilted her head. Not quite. You've cracked the loop. Now comes the part humans are famously bad at. What part? Kim asked. Follow through. The town responded immediately. Doors opened up and people spilled into the street, confused but smiling, like they'd woken from a nap they didn't realize they'd been taking for years. Conversations overlapped, unfinished sentences suddenly finishing themselves. Arguments ended instead of restarting. Someone laughed and then stopped laughing, startled by the sound like it was new. Mrs. Pruitt stared at her hose, water pooling at her feet. Why did I stop? She asked no one in particular. A man near the corner rubbed his temples. I was supposed to call my brother. Kim's hands trembled. They're remembering. Yes, the stranger said softly. Continuity is reasserting itself.
The town didn't like that.
The ground hummed beneath our feet, not violently, but insistently, like a warning buzz. Street signs flickered, letters rearranging themselves into comforting slogans before dissolving again. Welcome home. Take your time. Stay a while. The stranger snorted. Desperate. I felt a tug inside my chest, a familiar pull toward ease. The town was offering one last deal: stability without effort, safety without risk. The same bargain it always made. Only now I could see the fine print. Kim squeezed my arm. It's trying again. I know, I said. The stranger stepped between us and the center of the street, posture relaxed, eyes bright. This is where your species becomes interesting, she said. Most civilizations crumble here. They mistake relief for resolution. The humming intensified. The diner lights flared, warm and inviting. The smell of coffee drifted out, rich and nostalgic. For a split second, I wanted to go back inside, sit in my booth, let the day blur into another almost. The stranger glanced at me. That impulse, she said, is why this place worked so well. I clenched my fists. Not this time. The town pushed harder. Images flooded my mind uninvited. A stable routine, familiar faces, predictable days. No risk of failing because nothing truly changed. A life where I could complain safely instead of acting dangerously. I laughed, sharp and humorless. You're really selling fine like it's paradise. The stranger smiled. Humans will endure astonishing levels of dissatisfaction as long as it's familiar. Kim straightened her shoulders. I'm leaving too, she said suddenly. The town reacted instantly. The hum spiked. The air compressed. Someone screamed, not in fear, but in confusion, like their thoughts had just rearranged themselves mid-sentence. He stranger's ears. Hair, definitely hair, twitched with delight. 2 commitments in one cycle, she said. Oh, this system is not built for that. Kim swallowed hard. I don't have a plan. Neither did most of your missing residents, the stranger replied. They survived anyway. The ground lurched, not enough to knock us down, but enough to make the town's edges blur. Buildings shimmered, their outlines uncertain, like sketches being erased. A voice rolled through the street, not spoken but felt. Why leave? You are safe. I shouted back, without thinking. Safe isn't the same as alive. The stranger laughed outright. Excellent. You're learning the vocabulary. The town faltered. Street signs fell silent. The slogans vanished. The hum stuttered like a heart skipping beats. People started moving, not aimlessly but purposefully. Some ran to cars. Others hugged each other with a mix of relief and panic. A few stood frozen, unable to decide even now. The stranger watched them with fascination. There, she said. That's the split. What split? Kim asked. The ones who leave, she said, and the ones who need another cycle. I looked at the diner, at the booths, at the routines waiting inside. What happens to the ones who stay? The stranger shrugged. The loop will attempt to rebuild, but it won't be as strong. Once humans see the exit, it's harder to convince them it isn't there. That felt like a win. A small one maybe, but real. The air shifted again, lighter now, like pressure releasing. The town's edges sharpened, but in a different way, less dreamlike, more solid. Cedar Hollow felt ordinary, mortal. Kim let out a shaky breath. I think it's over. For you, the stranger corrected gently. A car engine roared to life nearby. Then another. The road out of town, the one that always bent back on itself, stretched forward instead, straight and open, cutting through the trees without looping. I stared at it. That's new. The stranger smiled, satisfied. Forward momentum unlocked. Kim laughed through tears. I don't even know where I'm going. That's fine, the stranger said. Humans are excellent at figuring things out after they commit. I turned to her. What about you? She looked genuinely surprised. Me? You helped, I said. Why? She considered, then shrugged. Part professional curiosity, part amusement, and the rest. Her smile softened, just a fraction. Your species frustrates the universe, she said. You're fragile, inconsistent, emotionally inefficient, and yet you persist. You refuse to be optimized. That's a compliment? Kim asked. From where I'm from, the stranger replied, it's the highest one. The town gave one final shudder, like a machine powering down. No reset followed. The sky stayed dark, stars fixed in place. I felt something loosen inside me. Fear, maybe, or the habit of waiting. So that's it? I asked. People can just go? Yes, the stranger said. They always could. Kim snorted. Figures. I turned toward the road. My heart hammered, not with dread, but with something sharper and cleaner. I'm going, I said, not as a test, not as a challenge. Just a statement. The town didn't react. No pull, no whisper, no guilt. The stranger watched me with open interest. Congratulations, she said. You've graduated. From what? She gestured vaguely at Cedar Hollow. From the most common human trap. Kim wiped her eyes. Which is? Waiting for permission, the stranger replied. We stood there for a moment, the three of us, as the town slowly reintroduced itself to reality. People packed. Doors closed. Lives unstuck themselves. I took a step toward the road. Then another. Nothing pulled me back. Behind me, the stranger cleared her throat. One more thing, she said. I turned. She grinned, that fox-like, knowing grin. When my superiors ask why the containment failed, she said, what should I tell them? I thought about Cedar Hollow, about loops and comfort, and the seductive lie of someday. About how close I'd come to staying forever. Tell them humans don't stay stuck because they can't leave, I said. They stay because they convince themselves it's noble. The stranger's eyes sparkled. Oh, they're going to hate that. Kim laughed. Good. The stranger stepped back, already fading somehow, like her job here was done. Good luck, she said lightly. Try not to build another loop wherever you land. No promises, I said. She smiled once more, then turned and vanished. Not in a flash, not dramatically, just gone, like she'd never been written into the scene at all. I took a deep breath and faced the road. Cedar Hollow had kept losing people at night, not because it took them, but because, eventually some humans remember that staying is a choice. And leaving is one too.